Formula One on 5 Live.
Good afternoon from Yas Marina. We've all done it. We've made it to the final race weekend of the year here in Abu Dhabi. A race that begins in the daylight and ends in darkness. That's on Sunday. Friday's action begins in the daytime too. Free practice one and the first hour of running on the way for you in a few minutes' time. It's Harry Benjamin with you up in commentary, and from my vantage point, which is just opposite the FIA garages, right at the top of the pit lane, we're high above at the top of the main grandstand. I can spy a tall lady looking directly at the windows of our commentary box. I believe she's outside McLaren. It could only be Rosanna Tennant. Good afternoon.
It is me. I am down here in the pit lane, Harry, and I'm trying desperately to see if I can see you, but they've got these very snazzy, reflective panes of glass for the commentary boxes, so I can't see your beautiful faces, but I'm imagining them, let me tell you. You can see me. Ordinarily, you'd find a rather sweaty pit lane reporter down here, but I'm breathing a bit of a sigh of relief because it's quite cloudy and overcast here in Abu Dhabi. Still 27 degrees, but the sun is not beating down just yet. So I'm breathing a sigh of relief. I'm feeling a little cooler than I thought I might. And you're right, I am outside the McLaren garage, where, of course, there's been so much focus here in Abu Dhabi on them. The two drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, of course, still in the title fight with Max Verstappen. And I've just been watching Lando Norris sit at the back of the garage. He's sat up on some of the furniture that they have at the back of the garage, chatting with his trainer, John Mulvern, and some of the mechanics, cutting a very relaxed figure, I have to say. And then if you swing over to Oscar Piastri's side of the garage, he is not there. He's sitting out this session for the Mexican driver, Pato O'Ward, who has been in the car already for a few minutes, getting ready for his FP1 session. So no Oscar Piastri in this session, Harry. I hope he's happy with his choice of using this practice session to sit out for the rookie drivers. It's a tricky weekend to start on the back foot, but then this session's not that representative, is it? Because it is in the daylight.
Yeah, exactly, but certainly more track time the better if you're a driver. But 9 rookies will be taking part in this FP1 session, as Rosanna says, so we'll run you through all the runners and riders when we get the green light on at the end of the pit lane and as the session progresses. Up in the commentary box, I am not alone. Alongside me, I've got the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson and F1 journalist Rebecca Clancy. We've got to start, haven't we, and big up this championship fight, Beck, because we've got a 3-way title fight, showdown in Sunday, 2 McLarens versus the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, and it could go either way.
It's so exciting. I lost my voice earlier in the week. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? The first time in 15 years we've got 3 drivers with a realistic shot of winning the championship. Lando Norris, teammate Oscar Piastri, and Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen is so shocked that he's still in the championship fight, he doesn't even have any family here, just in case he does win his 5th.
No, for Lando Norris, it's relatively easy. He is on the podium, he's champion. He finishes in the top 3. For Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri, it's a little bit more complicated. If Max Verstappen wins the race, he needs Norris to be 4th or lower to be champion. And if Piastri wins the race, he needs Norris to be 6th or lower. So, Andrew, Norris really is in the driving seat for this one. But we've seen all year long how quickly points can be left on the table.
Well, McLaren have done great demonstrations of that in the last 2 races, haven't they, Harry, by being disqualified in Las Vegas and then messing up their strategy quite badly in Qatar last weekend. So nothing can be taken for granted, and Formula 1 history says that too. The number of times that people have come into a Drivers' Championship showdown in the lead looking like they can't possibly lose it is long. And Andrea Stella, who's the team principal of McLaren, has his own bitter personal experience of that from here 15 years ago.
Yes, that was 2010, wasn't it? And Andrea Stella with Fernando Alonso. Thank you very much. It's still a bit early for me, to be honest. Tell you who's good at maths. It's Rosanna Tennant, and she's just had a McLaren zoom by her.
I have. Pato O'Ward first out of the blocks, leaving his garage, or should I say Oscar Piastri's garage. And Piastri's here. He's not having the afternoon off, so to speak. He's just been in the garage, fist bumping the mechanics on his way across to the pit wall, and he got to the pit wall and he had a chat with team principal Andrea Stella and McLaren CEO Zach Brown. They were all having a good giggle. They're all smiling as I'm watching them now, and Zach Brown has just said that Piastri can sit on his chair at the pit wall, and he's just put his orange papaya headset on and he's ready for the FP1 session, but a different vantage point this morning or this afternoon, wherever you're joining us from, for Piastri on the pit wall, not in his car.
No, but he will now have to watch the session, which is underway. Green light on at the end of the pit lane, and for those who wish to do a sync up, it's coming at you right now. It's 59 minutes and 42, 41, 40 seconds as the Racing Bulls car leads the McLaren out of the pit lane. I'll just run through who we've got, because there'll be a lot of different names being chucked at you across this session. So as Rosanna was saying, we've got Pato O'Ward in the McLaren. We're going to have Arvid Lindblad, the British racing driver of Swedish and Indian heritage, will be in the Red Bull. He's going to become a full-time Formula One driver next year for Racing Bulls. We've got Paul Aron, the Estonian driver who we've seen throughout the year. He's back in for his final run with Alpine. We are going to get a Leclerc in a Ferrari, but it's going to be the younger brother, Arthur Leclerc, will get his shot in the Scarlet car. Luke Browning returns for Williams. Ayumu Iwasa is in at Racing Bulls. Then we've got Rio Hirakawa in for Haas, and both Aston Martin cars occupied, so no Alonso and no Lance Stroll. So instead we will get Jack Crawford, who looks like he's going to be runner-up in the Formula 2 Championship this year, and Cian Shields, who might be a bit of a lesser known name, but he's just finished his first full-time campaign in Formula 2, done a bit of TPC testing with the Aston Martin team, and he's been given a shot in this Abu Dhabi session. So let's see how they all get on over the course of the next hour or so. But we're actually looking at the other Racing Bulls at the moment, Ayumu Iwasa, and I know we've got to talk about the championship across the weekend, but there was a bit of news elsewhere too, in the form that Red Bull have changed their lineup there, because Racing Bulls' Isaac Hadjar is going to get the promotion, which we all kind of thought was coming, but confirmed, and Yuki Tsunoda falls by the wayside.
Yeah, it's not a great week for Yuki Tsunoda. It will be his last race. He's staying within the Red Bull stable, but he's being demoted effectively to what is a reserve and test driver. As you say, completely expected. Isaac Hadjar was in the press conference this week, actually. He was being very coy, wasn't he, about when he actually was told, and even how he was told he was getting the promotion up to Red Bull, but he has indeed got it. We eventually got it out of him that it was in the Qatar race weekend. Helmut Marko pulled him to one side and told him that it was happening, although I think most of us knew before then anyway. And Arvid Lindblad, like you say, he currently in F2, very good driver, being part of that Racing Bull stable for a while now. He's being promoted up alongside Liam Lawson, who keeps his seat, which I think is actually the right thing, because Liam Lawson had a very difficult start to the year. Obviously he started with Red Bull. He wasn't given very long in that seat. It's a difficult being a teammate to Max Verstappen. He was then demoted down pretty quickly to Racing Bulls, and so I'm pleased to see Liam Lawson get another season.
Yeah, I think he described it as a big relief for Liam Lawson, whose year started in a very dramatic fashion, being dropped by Red Bull only after a couple of races. So good to see Lawson get that stability. We're watching Arvid Lindblad at the moment making his way through the left-hander of turn 9. That corner reprofiled a couple of years ago. Used to be a bit of a chicane and a clunky section of corners, and they've now smoothed it all out from a few years ago, and now he makes his way underneath the bridge at the hotel section through the left-hander of turn 14. He gets so close to the outside wall there, and we've seen many a driver make contact with the wall there before, pushing right to the limit. Not on his first lap though, because by the time he gets around the final corner, he crosses the line, and his first lap time is a 1:27.991. He's behind Pato O'Ward, who has the fastest lap time, a 1:27.3. Antonelli third, Iwasa and Hadjar the top 5 after the first bit of running in this session. In terms of the standings, let's bring you up to speed with how the exact numbers look. Lando Norris has 12 points over Max Verstappen, who sits in second. Oscar Piastri is 4 points behind. That is the championship fight that will go down to the wire on Sunday evening here in Abu Dhabi. Over in the Constructors, well, the top two places are now confirmed. McLaren, of course, won the Constructors title back in Singapore. Mercedes cemented second last time out. Red Bull and Ferrari, there is still a bit of a fight there to be had between third and fourth. Williams took fifth last time out in the Constructors, and then there's Racing Bulls in sixth, with just a handful of points still separating those in the midfield. Aston Martin, Haas and Sauber still fighting for something right at the end, with Alpine confined to last, 10th place in this 2025 Constructors Championship. And we can hear the sounds of one of the Alpine driver now. It's Franco Colapinto, who will be back next year for 2026, makes his way around the final corner, puts his foot down on the throttle, and then the back end just steps out. He has to get out of it and manages to save the car, but the opening of Colapinto's lap ruined there. The Alpine struggling for any kind of grip, and we do have to notify of a few farewells for this year. Obviously Yuki Tsunoda will not be a full-time racing driver next year. The Sauber team will be no more as they become Audi next year, same drivers, but that becomes a full works effort. And we'll say goodbye to Renault as well as an engine supplier. Alpine, which is effectively the Renault Works team, will take on Mercedes engines for next year. So Renault will bid farewell.
I didn't hear that. We've got poor radio static here. Sorry, the radio is not good. I couldn't hear you.
That's Lou Browning, who is having trouble hearing his engineer down at Williams, but a static on the radio there, and not working out for those two and getting caught in a bit of traffic. But yeah, Beck, I mean, there are a couple of farewells. Sauber, last race before their transformation, 3 decades in Formula One. It's a hell of a stint.
Yeah, they will become Audi. It has been a long stint. They haven't always been called Sauber. We have the situation in Formula One about sponsors. They come in, they change the name. But yes, it is officially now Sauber's last race, the eponymous team, and it will be Audi who takes over. They've been kind of, well, we knew it was coming, didn't we? Sauber haven't achieved, they're probably not one of the best known names within the paddock, but it will still be sad to see them go, just say 30 years within the sport, and we wave goodbye to them this weekend.
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie, Beck, didn't hear the last word you said.
No, that's all right. I was just saying we say goodbye to them this weekend.
And we do indeed. We do indeed. This is the sound of Arthur Leclerc making his way into the left-hander of turn 6. Ferrari off the back of a really troubling Qatar Grand Prix, and a pretty troubling year as well, looking that they might well go winless this year. And for Lewis Hamilton, podiumless. First time that might ever happen in his career. I mean, it's looking
18
likely.
18 years. That's amazing, isn't it? And he doesn't even look close, and he looks so despondent. I was speaking to him yesterday on Media Day, and he was being very honest, and he was saying, I said to him, what needs to happen between now and starting the 2026 season? And he just said, I need to take a good hard look at myself, my team. He was saying about the people around him. He was saying about how he even travels. So something for him hasn't quite clicked, but he was also saying that he needs to go into the factory. He needs to be looking at who's in what roles. I have a sneaky suspicion, he didn't say this, but I have a sneaky suspicion that his race engineer may change. They don't seem to have gelled at all. That is an incredibly important relationship. We know how well he got on with Pete Boddington at Mercedes. That was his longest ever partnership within Formula One. As I say, 18 seasons for him now. Something hasn't gelled for him within Ferrari. Yes, okay, there's been a lot of talk about how early Ferrari moved to the 2026 development. So this 2025 car has been an absolute dog of a car to drive. Charles Leclerc has said it, they're just a passenger in the car, they can't do anything with it. So sadly, it does look like Lewis Hamilton will have his first podiumless season.
He's picked up a lot of unwanted stats this year, just off the back of consecutive Q1 exits for the first time since 2009 as well. And that was a tough year for McLaren too. But for Lewis Hamilton, then we'll try and bounce back. We're not seeing him in this session. We'll have the two Leclercs in at Ferrari. Arthur Leclerc just navigating a bit of traffic coming into the tight and twisty section down at turns 11 and 12 with Arvid Lindblad's Red Bull just having to be negotiated. Lando Norris has gone to the top of the times, a 1:25.764. I mean, it's easy for him, effectively, Beck, isn't it? Top 3 finish is all he needs to seal the championship.
Is that the scariest word this weekend? Easy.
Yes.
Because if it was easy, he'd have finished on the podium in Vegas and he'd have finished on the podium in Qatar. but nothing is easy. He also has the problem, which is McLaren haven't exactly done him any favours as a team the last 2 races. So yes, I think, Science Radio.
Yeah, sector 2, I cannot push the braking. Why? Question? You know why. Okay.
Carlos Sainz then, with a couple of braking problems for him and his Williams. At the moment, he's down in 10th. So a bit of a curious radio message, intimating something going on there between Williams and why he's not able to push so hard on the brakes. But yes, obviously easy is an easy word to say, Andrew Benson, and it can be far from that at times. But in terms of when it comes to permutations, it's as simple as we could hope for.
Yes, I think that's the point. We need to distinguish between the simplicity of the mathematics for Lando Norris and the simplicity of the task, because no Grand Prix is easy to win, even if you've got the fastest car. And we keep talking about championship deciders. 2007 Brazil, Lewis Hamilton went in with a significant points advantage. He was competing with Kimi Raikkonen of Ferrari and the other McLaren driver Fernando Alonso at the time. He had a crazy race where he went off on the first lap, having tried an ill-advised move on Alonso. Then he had a problem with the hydraulics of his car, which put him to the back of the field, and he never got back in place to secure the championship, or at least to protect himself from Ferrari playing some team games, which is how they got Raikkonen to win. They basically moved Massa out of the way through the pit stop period. 2010 here, Fernando Alonso came in for Ferrari with an 8-point lead over Mark Webber of Red Bull and 15 over Sebastian Vettel of Red Bull. How could Alonso lose, everybody thought, but they did. They messed up their strategy, just like McLaren did in Qatar last weekend, and Alonso got stuck behind the Renault of Vitaly Petrov and had one of the most agonising days of his life, as did Andrea Stella, who was on the pit wall that time as his engineer. I've been talking to Andrea Stella about that race in the course of this year for various reasons, and the pain is still there for Alonso and Stella. That's 15 years ago, so all sorts of things can go wrong in these sorts of scenarios, and overtaking is not that easy in Abu Dhabi. It's probably going to be a one-stop race. Verstappen is the most formidable of competitors you could possibly hope to have. It's worth reading the interview that I did with him yesterday, even though I say so myself. He was very revealing in that piece that we've got on the BBC Sport website. And I think one of the most revealing things is just how relaxed he is. And I think it's pretty clear that McLaren, understandably, because they've been in the position where they've been expected to win the championship all year, they are very much not a relaxed team at the moment. And so you just never know how human beings are going to react under pressure. And Formula One, a championship decider here, is one of the most extreme forms of pressure you can get in sport. So we should take nothing for granted.
Take nothing for granted. I mean, Beck, what have you made so far from what we've heard from the top 3? Because is there a bit of a rhetoric throughout the paddock that we'd all kind of like it to be a little bit more drama-filled, a little bit more tension? It feels like, oh, no, after you, sir. No, it's okay. Please, you, between the 2 McLaren drivers, at least. Yeah,
I think you're 100% right. I think what was interesting yesterday with Media Day is McLaren pulled all of their drivers' media commitments. So normally they do kind of smaller sit-downs with, let's say, Fleet Street or with TV or whoever. And actually, McLaren turned around and said, we are only going to do the FIA press conference. Very well done. It was the 3 drivers. Whereas Red Bull, Max Verstappen, obviously Andrew Benson did his exclusive interview with Verstappen. He was doing other things. But what the big takeaway was from that press conference was they weren't really needling each other. There wasn't really any tension between them. When, for example, if Piastri was talking, then Norris and Verstappen were having a bit of a joke, and there was almost a bit of a love-in between Norris and Piastri at one point. But then I think if you dug a little bit further down, there was some needling, and there were a few, stirring the pot, as I'll stay with Verstappen, and he was saying, well, I wasn't expecting to be in the fight. After Zandvoort, everything got cancelled when he was 104 points behind Piastri, as he was then the championship leader. And there was just a bit of niggly, and he was saying, the championship trophy was just to the side of the 3 of them. And Verstappen was saying, well, I've already got 4 of those. I've achieved everything I want. I've got nothing to lose. And then Piastri's there saying, well, I've got the least to lose because I'm currently in 3rd. And then Norris turns around and says, well, I don't really have a lot to lose. I'm not even sure I'll think about this weekend in 30 years. And you're thinking, crikey O'Reilly, I'm not sure anyone's believing that. But then as the press conference goes on, the tones slightly change, and then Norris is asked slightly the same question, but in a slightly different way, and he does admit, okay, 16 years of my life, I've been building up to this. This is what I've been going towards, working towards. And then the question comes, because, as Benny says, the maths is simple until it's not. And the question that everybody was waiting for was, what happens if Verstappen is winning and Norris is fourth and Oscar Piastri is second? And the question went to Norris, what would you expect your teammate to do? How would you respond? And Norris, knowing exactly what he was doing, said, well, if it was me, I would help my teammate. I would move aside. Whoever's running in third, everyone's put George Russell in that position because he's had a great season. I would let George Russell go for second, effectively, and then I would let my teammate come onto the podium to claim the championship. Norris then finishes it with, but that's just me. That's the kind of person I am. And Oscar Piastri is obviously sat next to him, and the question goes to him, and he says, well, look, we haven't discussed it. Of course they've discussed it. Absolutely no one is believing that line. But it's a reality. It could come down to the most difficult of decisions in a season where McLaren have been so upfront about letting their drivers race fairly, papaya rules. It's been a meme. People don't like it. People do like it. McLaren can't really seem to win whatever they decide to do. But in a season where they have actually let their drivers race, the championship could be decided on the biggest of team orders.
Yeah, there's an interesting scenario on that basis, isn't there? By the way, everybody, Lando Norris is quickest at the moment, but only by 14 thousandths of a second, despite having the medium tyre compared to Max Verstappen's hard tyre. Verstappen's second fastest with Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes third. But the key thing, I think, is the racing principles of McLaren are that they'll allow their drivers to race until such a point that one of them can't win the championship. And that's the point here, I think. There could potentially come a point, because of the maths, Piastri's 16 points behind Norris, where the reality is, even if the race is still active, Piastri actually can't win the championship anymore. And so there is room within those racing principles, higher rules as they've been incorrectly dubbed, because they don't use that term within McLaren, even though Tom Stallard did start it on the radio in Monza last year. The engineer of Oscar Piastri, that is, where that's the reality. And as a team, they cannot afford not to ask Oscar Piastri to move aside in that scenario. Now, of course, as a driver, it's not the way you would ideally win the World Championship, but the driver wins the championship, even though it's the driver's championship. He wins it with the team. He can't do it without a car and his engineers and everybody else. So I think we can reliably expect that to happen should that scenario unfold.
But didn't Zach Brown in an interview a few weeks ago basically intimate that in order to continue this fairness, if Lando Norris is stuck behind Oscar Piastri, there would be no team orders, because those are the cards they've been dealt, and that's the way it unfolds. And if that means Max Verstappen takes the championship, then he would rather that outcome than asking one of his drivers to pull out the way.
He would say that, yes, and he did mean that in terms of when they're both in contention. But so the scenario that everyone's talking about, there's more than one scenario, but the most obvious scenario, given the competitiveness of the cars involved, is that Verstappen is leading the race. Piastri is either second or third. Someone else is also either second or third, and Norris is fourth.
All right, let's power.
That's Behrman.
Okay, stand by. Hydraulic leak.
Ooh, hydraulic leak for Ollie Behrman, who was running very slowly down the back straight, moved right to the side as well. This is the sound of the Haas car. Let's see if he can make it back to the pits, but not the ideal start for Ollie Behrman.
And so, yes, just to continue that point, so George Russell yesterday was saying that he thinks they should just let it play out. I wouldn't want to win the championship that way, he says now, but it's easy to say that when you're not in a position to actually win the championship. So, I don't know what more to say other than that. I'm confident in the belief that will happen should that scenario arise, but it probably won't. But
and we won't find out until Sunday.
But Rebecca's absolutely right. There's no question that they've not discussed it. They have discussed it, 100%. And so I'm not sure Norris was being disingenuous in that answer. I think he knows what the scenario is, and in a slightly roundabout way, he was just making it clear what the scenario was.
I don't know. I didn't say he was being disingenuous. I mean, he knew exactly what he was saying. If the call comes in on Sunday for Piastri to move out of the way, then we're all going to go back to the quote that Norris gave us on Thursday to say, well, Norris said he would have done it. Of course, you know, there is also, there are a lot of scenarios going on here. We're trying to simplify it as much as possible. But what if Norris and Verstappen are back in 7th and 8th and Piastri is up on the podium and he could potentially win it? You know, perhaps we do find out if Norris would actually go through with what he said. So I don't think he was being disingenuous, but I think there were a lot more mind games going on within that press conference. And yeah, Harry, you're absolutely right. It was a bit nicey-nicey, but I think, you know, you didn't have to dig particularly deep to see that there were some mind games going on.
Because the question, of course, as well, is that they can talk about it all they like, but when Piastri's in the car, in the race, he is the only one in control of that situation, and he's the one who has to make that decision. And on one level, it's an easy decision, because they've all theoretically bought into the harmony of McLaren and how they go racing, and it's all for one and one for all and all the rest of it, and we're allowed to race, but we work for the team and blah, blah, blah. They've all bought into that, and if he doesn't move over, that's exploded, and he can never come back from that. And that's what he's got to weigh up going into the race. On the other hand, as a competitor, to hand the championship to the teammate, when you've both had very difficult seasons in different ways. You know, there was a point in the season not that long ago, 8 races ago, where we were all saying, how can Oscar Piastri lose this championship? He's 34 points ahead. Here's some radio from Lindblad.
Yeah, grip is still really bad. But the first part of the lap, I felt like I'm just bleeding massive lap time because I'm on ice.
Arvid Lindblad, who's a Racing Bulls driver next year, full-time, driving the Racing Bulls right now is, the Red Bull right now is struggling for grip. It's another thing to be in that position as a competitor and just hand that, the greatest prize in sport, to your teammate that you've competed with, when you've both had you've both had a half season where you've been really good and a half season where you've not.
I agree. Well, at 38 minutes and 46 seconds, by the way, Hadjar is now topping the session on the hard tyre, a 1:25.245. Sainz just pops up into second as well with the fastest first sector. Bortoletti, Hulkenberg, Norris, who's back in the pit lane, has been dropped down to 5th, ahead of Verstappen. Colapinto, Leclerc, Antonelli, Russell, the top 10. Then it's O'Ward. Aaron is in 11th. Behrman has made it back to the pit lane after a possible hydraulic leak for the Haas driver. Then it's Lindblad. Hirakawa, as Arthur Leclerc has a lack of grip coming through the tight right-hander of turn 12. Bit of traffic in front of him as well. Runs wide, rejoins. He's down in 16. Then it's Iwasa, Crawford, Shields, and Luke Browning. Actually hasn't set a representative lap time. Here's Russell.
So Iwasa at 3 seconds.
I think that is O'Ward, not Iwasa.
Sorry, O'Ward, yep.
Easy mistake.
George Russell. I love that, the awareness to correct his engineer on who's behind him. It was indeed Pat O'Ward, not Ayumu Iwasa coming through. I daren't disagree with Andrew Benson ever, but I wonder...
Feel free, Harry.
I wonder, if Oscar Piastri denied to move out the way, and you say he could never come back from that and the harmony would be destroyed, I would actually argue the opposite and go, if there is anywhere where a driver could suddenly be selfish, surely it would be at the final race of the season after a year that McLaren have had in ensuring fairness. They've played the game right up until the final race. I think because of that and because of the context of the whole year, I think he could ignore any kind of order and be selfish and still hold his head high and go, well, look, I've played the team game, I've moved over before, I've given back positions, it was the final race, I'm an athlete, I was trying to get the Drivers' Championship, it wasn't going to go my way, but at the same time, I want to maximise every opportunity.
It doesn't work in the context of McLaren because there are 3 key words in the way Andrea Stella runs that team: openness, trust, and transparency. Trust is absolutely central. If you betray the trust, then they don't want you there. It's as simple as that. Andrea Stella's a very nice man. You've met him, I know him pretty well. He's a charming, intelligent man, but he's hard because you have to be hard to be a manager in Formula One. And that's the way he expects the team to be run. That's the way he's running the team. And so that's why I think if as the racing driver you made that decision, there would inevitably be consequences down the line somehow. And they've not had the easiest. Here's some more radio for this time. Hirakawa.
Passing turn 6-7. It's a bit annoying. Okay.
Annoying is one word for aerodynamic bouncing for sure. they've not had an easy season, McLaren, have they? They've got themselves into some situations where it's all got a bit difficult, team orders scenarios, people being allowed to run opposing strategies and ending up beating someone they probably shouldn't have beaten in some people's eyes, pit stop shenanigans where they swap the drivers back and forth. But in each case, they've handled it on the basis of those fundamental principles. And if you're going to then decide unilaterally to not comply with those overwhelming fundamental principles, then you're going to cause a problem, aren't you?
Okay, so I think McLaren have done an amazing job of keeping it cordial between the drivers. However, I don't fully buy in to the fact that it's all harmonious. And everyone is saying that Piastri will definitely move aside if asked to, because they all have these multi-year contracts. Except the rumours are rife in the paddock this weekend that Oscar Piastri is looking to sign a different contract for 27. And you can tell me that these contracts exist for however long, but contracts in Formula One do not mean anything. They are not worth the paper they are written on. Anyone can be bought out of a contract. Anyone can move teams if there's enough money involved and you can pay it all off. I don't believe it's quite as harmonious as we're being led to believe. Of course it can't be. You've got the phrase in itself, teammates, is an oxymoron. But I don't fully believe that just because Piastri has a contract for, they never fully tell us the length, but it's a multi-year deal even from here. I don't fully believe that McLaren expect to have this driver lineup in 27. And I don't even think it would be possible because, okay, we have 26 coming, whole new set of regulations. We have absolutely no idea what the pecking order is going to be. But I think if Piastri really has sat down, or let's say his manager has, it won't be him, but he really is up and down the paddock, at the top end of the paddock, let's be honest, talking to teams about a very real prospect of a contract for 27, does he need to move over?
No, exactly. I mean, what I'm saying is, if they ask him and he doesn't, then that explodes the way they've been running the team. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen. That's a completely different question. You can decide in that scenario not to do it. But what I'm just saying is, if that's what he does, then that's what the consequences will be. It doesn't mean it won't happen.
No, but I thought it was, to your point, Harry, as well. You're talking about drivers, they're selfish, they want to be world champion. Oscar Piastri, in the last question of the press conference, he literally said the words, racing drivers are selfish. He was actually asked if his manager is Mark Webber, part of that, as Benny mentioned, that 2010 fight, would he feel some kind of redemption for Mark Webber? And he just flat out said, no. I'm doing this for me.
Brutal.
Whatever, I don't care. Racing drivers are selfish. We race for ourselves. It's all about us. And he's right.
He is right, but also Mark Webber, as you well know, went through that 2010 heartbreak. He was still in the fight, but he had there was such toxicity between him and Sebastian Vettel when they were still racing together in 2012, Multi-21, Malaysia. I'm not bad for a number 2 driver in Silverstone, when the differences in front wings. So Mark Webber's been there and been on the bad side of it. There's no way he has not given that kind of feedback and go, okay, Oscar, here's what I would have done instead. And I don't know what Mark Webber would have done, but surely he would have gone, I wouldn't have stood for it at the first place, and neither should you.
I know Mark looks back and thinks that perhaps he could have done things a bit differently, but I think at the same time, the reason it got to that situation at Red Bull was because Christian Horner wasn't running that team in the way Andrea Stella's running McLaren. They said things publicly that were not true. They claimed publicly they were treating the drivers equally, and then they would do things like ask Webber's engineer to move him out of the way in a race, or swap front wings, which is what led to the not bad for a number 2 driver controversy in Silverstone, or in Canada after Turkey, where they had the crash between Webber and Vettel. Webber was assured that he would be allowed to compete with Vettel. The next race was in Canada. Vettel had a gearbox problem, and they ordered him to stay behind and not race him. And yet publicly they were saying they were allowed to compete with each other. So that's the difference, and that's how Webber ended up in that situation. And by McLaren running their team in a very different way this year, is how, at least publicly, the drivers have not ended up in that situation. They've managed to keep a lid on whatever tensions there may be. Of course there are tensions behind the scenes. Of course they've had conversations where, hang on a minute, you screwed me with this pit stop, or how did you allow Lando to overcut me with that strategy, or whatever it might be. Of course those conversations have been had, but they've had them and they've come out of them and carried on being able to work in that way, in the way that they weren't able to do with McLaren in 2007, for example, between Hamilton and Alonso, between Webber and Vettel at Red Bull, between Hamilton and Rosberg at Mercedes, and so on and so forth. But doesn't mean that it won't then all blow up at some point. But that's why it hasn't done so far.
And I think you're right. We have to give so much credit to the way the new McLaren management is between Stella and Brown. Am I a bad person? Am I wrong for kind of thinking back to the Vettel-Webber years and just smiling and kind of enjoying it as a fan? That was brilliant.
As a fan, that's what we want.
It was brilliant, and I'm missing that a little bit right now. I don't know, even Rosberg and Hamilton in was it Austin where he threw the cap at him in the cool down room, and I remember Webber, was it either, well, because it was Multi-21 after Malaysia, but I don't know if it was the same race or if it was Silverstone where he sat in the press conference room and he drinks his glass of water and then just slams it back down on the table.
That was Silverstone.
That's Silverstone.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolute
They're
cinema.
very different personalities though, aren't they? I mean, even in the press conference yesterday, they were Norris and Piastri. They were asked what they admire about each other, and Norris was saying, "Well, he's very calm and cool. I don't always know, like, what he's feeling. Really, he's just they're such. I mean, they're very different people. I think Norris wears his heart on his sleeve a lot more, but Piastri is the coolest person in the paddock. Nothing seems to faze him. And going back to talking about when I saw Lewis Hamilton yesterday, and he was asked, Brit, are you supporting a fellow Brit in Lando Norris? And Hamilton turned around and went, no, they're all my rivals. I don't care who wins. It's not me winning. And they were like, okay, but what advice would you give them? And I was like, no, I wouldn't give them any advice. And then I was like, trying to get something out of him. I said, okay, but how did you feel going into your maiden championship fight? And he said, oh my God, I was unbelievably nervous. And not just my second, like 2014, I remember being so nervous. But then I look at these guys and they don't seem to be nervous at all. And they don't really seem to be nervous at all. Because I remember being here for 2016 with Rosberg, going into his pre-race media sessions, and he was giving the same lines out, but he was so clearly nervous. He was almost shaking as he was speaking, and you could see it. But when they sit in the press conference, maybe they're just more media trained now, I don't know, but there was a slightly different vibe. They were all sort of conscious enough to be playing the mind games, to be needling each other and messing about with each other a little bit, and they don't seem as nervous as I would perhaps expect. Like Rosanna was saying earlier, Norris is in the back of his garage having selfies with his teammates, and he looks as calm as you like.
They are nervous though, and I think, do you remember in 2016, Beck, I thought one of the most interesting things about that weekend was after Rosberg had won the championship, he held the press conference with us, and he said, I'm sorry I've been the way I have been this year, but you guys are tough, and I've had to be this way because that was my only way of handling it. And even Verstappen, he was saying in the interview yesterday, they'll be more nervous than me. When I was here in 21, I was nervous. He didn't look nervous in 21, but there he is admitting it here that he was. And so how can they not be? It's just human to be nervous. So just imagine the intensity that Lando Norris is going to experience on the grid here on Sunday.
Rosanna, what are your thoughts?
Well, the other thing I picked up on during the press conference yesterday, and I've loved listening to all of your points of view on this, was that Lando Norris said that he and Oscar Piastri get on well, but it only takes one decision. And of course, again, just sowing a seed for Sunday and what might or might not happen with Oscar Piastri. But if Oscar Piastri doesn't move aside and help his teammate out on Sunday, what's the worst that can happen next year? Are they not going to fuel his car? Are they not going to service it when it comes in for a pit stop?
A self-imposed stop-go.
Is he going to be a pariah? I just don't feel like it's not going to be a huge punishment, surely. And I just think, that'll probably be playing on his mind as well. But as he says, until he knows what's expected, he doesn't have an answer on what he'll do. And I feel for him because that's what everyone's asking. And as Beck said, there could be a situation where Lando Norris has to help Piastri if he's had a shocker. And let's not forget, Lando's starts of late haven't been great. They might have wanted to be aggressive, but in his own words, they were stupid in Vegas, for example. So there's a lot at stake here.
I mean, we're spending a lot of time talking about this, aren't we? But let's be honest, the chances are it's probably not going to happen that way. It's only a very specific scenario, but it's because that one scenario...
How long have you worked in sport, Andrew? Come on.
It's because that one scenario does seem so credible and possible, doesn't it? Verstappen first, Piastri second, George Russell third, Lando Norris fourth. Here's Shields' radio.
That was Kian Shields, I think, just coming through Sector 1, coming through the fast sweepers of 3 and 4. And I think it was his Aston Martin teammate for this session, Jack Crawford, who was coming out of the pit lane.
Mate. I copy that, Jack. Wasn't very good. Sorry about that.
poor communication between pit wall and driver there for both Aston Martin cars. I think as Crawford was out of the pit lane and then immediately cut across to the right-hand side, which is where Cian Shields was coming through.
Leclerc Jr. at 3 seconds.
I find it quite funny you call him Junior.
that's GP, Max Verstappen's engineer, referring to the younger Leclerc brother, Arthur Leclerc, the 25-year-old who is also a development driver for Ferrari in Lewis Hamilton's car for this session.
Do you know who is driving whose car at Aston Martin, by the way?
I think I thought Crawford was in Alonso's car.
Okay.
And I'll double check that, but I think Crawford's in Alonso's car.
Because if I was like a really rubbish F2 driver who'd done nothing in my first season, I wouldn't want to be driving Fernando Alonso's car.
I think you mean pointless, put it diplomatically and correctly. You know what, just on Cian Shields, I was because the regulations state that every team has to run 2 rookies twice in each car over the course of a season, a rookie being someone who hasn't started 2 Grand Prix. Aston Martin have actually already fulfilled their criteria with Jack Crawford coming in. And so I was speaking to people within the paddock, and Cian Shields, a name not known to most of you, possibly because you don't look that far down the leaderboard, pointless in F3, pointless in F2. And I said, come on, what do you reckon? What's the guess of how much he's paying to take part in FP1, sorry. And I was thinking we'd be in the hundreds of thousands region. The multiple answer I actually got was in the region of 3 to 4 million. Yes.
I heard a slightly lower number. But
I heard that multiple times. That's why I thought,
it's definitely a lot of money. Yeah.
Yes.
And we can be safe to say that.
Yeah. Cian Shields is.
That it will cost him a lot more if he damages Fernando Alonso's car.
Well, yes. If they crash into each other, which is what they almost nearly did, coming through turn 3. But they both live to fight another day on that one. In fact, Jack Crawford, who was in the running for the Formula 2 title. That was won by Leonardo Fonorari last time out, and he's actually just been signed as a McLaren development driver for next year. Crawford will become Aston Martin's official 3rd reserve driver for 2026, replaces Felipe Drugovich, who has gone off to Formula E because his quests for a Formula 1 drive have not proved fruitful. 23 minutes, 37, 36, 35 seconds on the clock. It's now Max Verstappen, as the soft tyre has gone on, has gone fastest, a 1:24.4. He is 26 thousandths of a second faster than Lando Norris. Then comes Leclerc, Hülkenberg, Russell the top 5, with Antonelli, Colapinto and Sainz, who's just popped up into 8th. Hadjar and Bortoletto round out the top 10. Hirakawa, O'Ward, I was nearly George Russell's engineer there. It's O'Ward, Lindblad in 13th, Iwasa 14th, Behrman 15th, and it's Aaron Browning, the younger Leclerc brother, of 18th, Shields and Crawford, 20 drivers in the field.
Junior, as we call him now.
Junior, yeah. As Ollie Behrman is told to box this lap, we may have the same issue. So we reported a possible hydraulic leak earlier in the session. He obviously made it back to the pits. He's now back out there, but being called back in. So problems for Behrman. There was also a lot of work going on the underside of Arvin Lindblad's car. He's in place for Yuki Tsunoda for this session. Of course, we see so many rookies in this session because, as we say, as Rebecca was saying about the rule for rookie drivers, but also it's a bit of an unrepresentative session. It will cool down when we get going for FP2, which will be at 1 o'clock in the UK in the afternoon, but the sun will start to set, the floodlights will come on and illuminate this Yas Marina circuit, temperatures drop, bit more grip as well from the cars rubbering in. We have got Formula 2 here as well, so that will all affect the track characteristics, so that's why you can kind of afford, as Oscar Piastri is doing, to sort of sit out this session. Max Verstappen is now top of the leaderboard. So given all of our discussion just now of the 2 McLaren drivers and the will they, won't they, all the possible scenarios, does Max Verstappen then just sit back and rub his fingers together as Pato O'Ward locks up at turn 1?
I should just say, by the way, the drivers pick which FP sessions to miss. So Piastri would have chosen at the start of the year to skip this one, perhaps regretting that now, but like you say, it's not really representative. Max Verstappen is definitely the calmest of the 3. He has the experience, he has those 4 titles. He is standing on the cusp of history because he would only be the 2nd driver to win 5 titles in a row after Michael Schumacher. It's not in his hands, as he said in the press conference. It's not his decision almost to win the World Championship. He can't just turn up and win the race. Things have to go in his favour. So all he can do, and to be honest, I'm not entirely sure Max Verstappen knows any other way to race other than to go out and win it. You know, same can be said for Piastri and Norris as well. But for me, one of the things that if I was a McLaren driver that's niggling at me is the last 2 races, the team have cost them so many points. Can they get it right on the day? Because it's not just the drivers feeling the pressure. Okay, the teams care about the Constructors' Championship. It's where the prize money is. It is a team effort. Formula One, despite what a lot of people think, it is an incredible team effort. But all the glory is in the Drivers' Championship. Everybody, including Zach Brown, despite what he says that he's happy with the Constructors, he wants the Drivers' Championship as well. What is that on the track?
I think there's a can of, looks like a can of Red Bull, if I'm totally honest with you. It's just rolling across the middle of the track on the start-finish straights. That's obviously somehow made it in from the grandstands there.
But that will be reported in soon, and we'll get a virtual safety car or something.
Other soft drinks are available, of course. So the question, of course, is...
There aren't other Formula One teams called Red Bull available.
No,
But, racing balls.
Yeah.
Incidentally, there's McLaren have some soft drinks with them this weekend, and they're a particular brand, a very famous brand of fizzy drink. But on all the cans is the giant word Max, which someone brought one over to me in a meeting earlier and said, perhaps we shouldn't have these with us.
Maybe not.
He's stalking them.
So I think there's a question to be asked about how far will Max Verstappen go. And I don't know, maybe we can play this out in the second session, but I asked him about this in the interview yesterday, and I thought the exchange was quite interesting. I said, would you do what Hamilton did to Rosberg in 2016 and back him into the rest of the field? And he said, but the layout was quite different then, plus I think at that time Lewis was the quickest guy on the track, so you've got a bit more margin to play with. I wasn't that satisfied with that answer, so I had another go. I said, that's one example of the sort of thing you could do, and he goes, no, it's quite tough probably to do something like that. At the end of the day, we just want to do our best race, and the other things are not really in our control. So I said, well, you know, people have won championships in pretty dirty ways in the past, like Michael Schumacher, for example. He said, I think that's quite extreme. It's not something I'm thinking about.
But I don't think it is something he's thinking about, because when Schumacher did it, he could take out another driver and still win the championship because he had the points advantage. He was already in the lead. Whereas I think for Verstappen, it's in his. I mean, his only way he can really win is to win the. It is a can. Oh, it's not.
Oh no,
it's not a Formula One team. It looks like those cans of water that we get over here. It must have been thrown onto the track or something, is it? But the cameras have picked up on it, but the FIA apparently aren't watching, and it's still out on track. But is it right? No, it's not. So a strange one. I'm surprised we're still going around at speed, but anyway, I'm sure that will change soon. What were we talking about? Max Verstappen. Yes, so I think the only way he can win the championship is to just go flat out and race. He doesn't want to take Norris out at the first corner because you cannot risk the damage that you might do to your own car. You know, what you can do at this track, and I'm not really sure I buy into the layout argument from him either, you cannot overtake on this track, which is why the backup argument works so well.
Yep.
So he can do that, and I'm absolutely certain that between when they arrived here from Qatar last week to going into Sunday morning and jumping into the car for the race, they will be going through every single permutation of ways that they can win this. Qualifying is going to be essential here this weekend because it is a track you can't overtake. And if you're Verstappen, Piastri or Norris, that's 3 into 2, which doesn't go, but you need to be on the front row here, because if you start getting any further back, you're going to get caught up in perhaps whatever mess might happen, as often does happen in the run down to turn 1. So quali, absolutely Saturday is all essential, and then once you've got Saturday out of the way, then you start, planning through the different situations and what could happen, how you could win the championship. I don't think Verstappen's a dirty driver.
I was going to say exactly that, actually. I think that he races right to the edge and beyond, and has done consistently through his career, but I don't think he's he's not a Schumacher who will actually physically try to take someone out of the race. He'll really push them to the point where that's on the edge of happening, but he doesn't just drive. Well, he did it against George Russell in Spain, but he talked about that in the interview as well. I obviously regretted that. But that was just like a clumsy, I'm so cross with you, I'm going to bang wheels.
That was just a bit of red mist.
Yeah,
that's not him deliberately being...
Exactly.
He's not the first driver to have red mist, and he won't be the last driver either in Formula One. I am reliably informed by my producer that Rosanna has been standing by with an absolutely incredible statistic that just needs to be heard on air.
I've been absolutely set up to fail here. I've been trying to explain it to Paddy, our producer, and he's like, I just don't get it. Tell me again. So I'm going to try, you guys. I was reading an article of some of our esteemed colleagues in the media centre, and it just made me stop and think, because we're all talking about permutations, we're all talking about who needs to finish where. So if we were to rerun 18 of the 23 races that we've already had this season, Lando Norris would win, and those races are Australia, China, Japan, Bahrain, Saudi, Miami, Imola, Monaco, Spain, Austria, Britain, Belgium, Hungary, Italy, Singapore, Austin, Mexico and Brazil. If we ran 4 races again from this season where the results have played out in a way that would make Max Verstappen, they would be Canada, Baku, Las Vegas and Qatar, so only 4 to 18 when we were talking about Norris. And when it comes to Piastri, there's only one race where if it was repeated, he would end up as the title winner, and that would be the Dutch Grand Prix. Of course, the Dutch Grand Prix was when Lando Norris DNF. And for those 4 races, if you were to rerun for Max Verstappen to become champion, Canada, Lando Norris ran into the back of Piastri. Baku, Piastri had a shocker weekend. Vegas, McLaren got disqualified. And Qatar, McLaren mucked up the strategy. So I think what we're seeing is that Lando Norris is the favourite in whichever way you want to look at things. Are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you, Rosanna. I don't know why Patrick didn't understand that.
Good.
That's a lot of hypothetical.
There is, but I mean, it's just all it does is serve to underline what we already know, Rosanna, doesn't it? Which is that just 12-point lead when there's 10 points between first and third place. It's obvious that Norris is a pretty strong favourite, but there are still ways it can go wrong, and that's 4 out of 24 4 out of 23 as a percentage. What's that?
Come on, you're good at maths.
15% or something.
Yeah,
so
I think I had that number.
It's not a stat to ignore.
Thank you.
Thank goodness for Rosanna Tennant keeping us on the straight and narrow with
and when
statistics
it comes to
like
all our expenses, I'll add them up, divide them, and tell you what you owe as well.
Yeah,
so I can be the team accountant.
Well, every team needs one. Rosanna Tennant, our accountant, reporting down from the Abu Dhabi pit lane for us.
She has some proper accountancy skills too, doesn't she? It has to be said.
Yeah, no, she
did our numbers really well.
She does help us out, Rosanna, from Vegas last time out, and Vegas is not cheap. I will tell you that for nothing.
I thought you were going to say, Benny, I've got some redeeming factors or qualities. So no, I'm a winner. Compliments all round.
Many redeeming factors, Rosanna.
Oh, thank you.
Who's buying dinner tonight?
Rosanna.
Benny, I've heard.
Yeah.
That wallet's being dusted off as we speak.
He couldn't get the dust off it, Rosanna.
You're losing your redeeming factors fast, Gary.
Oh, right. Where's the time gone? 13 minutes, 17, 16, 15 seconds left of the first free practice session of the weekend. It's Lando Norris, who is fastest, having put on the soft tyre. It's a 1:24.485. He's 8 thousandths of a second quicker than Max Verstappen, and Norris is back in pit lane. Helmet off, actually. Sort of doesn't look like he's going anywhere anytime soon. Leclerc, in the form of Charles Leclerc, is third. Then it's Kimi Antonelli in fourth. Hulkenberg's up in fifth. Then it's Russell, Bortoletto, Behrman is up in eighth, but has actually been retired from this session. So we'll try and find out a little bit more about what's going on down there. But suspected hydraulic leak. He's been in and out of the pit lane, and now the problem too severe to continue on. Behrman out of the car. Sainz is ninth. Colapinto's in 10th. Rio Hirakawa in the Haas in 4. Esteban Ocon is 11th. Then comes Hadjar. Paul Aron, who is in for Pierre Gasly, is 13th. Pato O'Ward, who is in for Oscar Piastri, is in 14th. Arvid Lindblad, who is in for Yuki Tsunoda, is in 15th. Iwasa is in for Lawson, is 16th. Browning is in for Albon in 17th. Leclerc Jr. has actually just been demoted down to 19th. Hamilton not in this session because Jack Crawford, who's in for Alonso, is 18th. Kian Shields, who is in for Lance Stroll, 20th and last. So no major dramas to report in this session, although Lando Norris, not that long ago, had a bit of a moment coming through the fast sweepers of 2 and 3.
It was quite a big moment,
yeah. Enough to certainly keep him alert, that's for sure. Big snap on the McLaren, but he managed to hold it. But if that's something that can so easily happen in qualifying, and you suddenly miss your opportunity for pole position. And to back up what Beck was saying, so tricky to overtake around here. You get 2 DRS zones, but really you're sort of eyeing out for turn 6, late braking into the chicane. Turn 9's very tricky, and after turn 1 you're finding it difficult, really. Maybe a lunge at turn 5, but you've got to be really close distance to the car in front of you. Right, back down to Rosanna. Any more stats?
Oh, give me a chance, mate. I've put the abacus away temporarily. I've just heard from Haas on Ollie Behrman. We heard he was told to retire the car, and that's because of a sensor issue. The team say the car is fine, but they just need to investigate it. But he's managed 14 laps, 11 on the hard tyre and 3 on the mediums. But I think if you're going to miss a session, not that you want to miss anything, but this one's probably a good one to have an issue in because of it being unrepresentative of the conditions they'll face during qualifying in the race. But tricky stuff still for Ollie Behrman. Your mate Ollie Behrman, who you've been catching up with this weekend, Harry.
And I think we can actually hear from him now. Can we play a bit of that clip, producer Paddy? No, he's decided to ignore me. No Behrman, but I did have my final catch-up of the year with him, because we have been catching up with Ollie throughout the season, throughout his rookie season, and he was on a pretty good run of things, 5 consecutive points finishes, which ended in Qatar last time out. But certainly, I think a fairly impressive rookie season. Should we do a quick bit of rookie chat? You know, how they've gone this year? Do we fancy a bit of that?
I mean, they've all been good, haven't they? Behrman's had a really good season. He really has. He's come on strong. I've got some stats here if you would like to hear them.
Oh, God, we've got them. If it's not as good as Rosanna's, I don't want to hear it.
His qualifying stats against Esteban Ocon, his teammate. Now, Esteban Ocon's not exactly an all-time great, but he's a good, solid Formula 1 driver. He's 18.9 ahead, Behrman, at an average of 0.182 seconds over the season. So that's very impressive in terms of pure pace, and he's been doing some really good, strong race drives too. Obviously, Isaac Hadjar has done enough to impress Helmut Marko and Laurent Mekies enough to get into the Red Bull seat alongside Max Verstappen next year. He's had a very, very strong season, and I'll stop talking and give someone else a chance to keep going.
Beck, want to comment on anyone? Who do you want to take? What about Bortoletto?
He's been okay. The thing I was just going to add about Hadjar, it's incredible to think about Australia where he crashed on the formation lap. Because this
is Formula 1, isn't it? In a nutshell.
I mean, thank goodness it's such a long season. I could be forgiven for thinking that wasn't even this year. Bortoletto has been okay. I'm not sure he's... Oh, Verstappen radio.
I don't know if something broken on the car.
Where are the main areas of issue?
Well, it's everywhere now.
So problems for Max Verstappen then. Thinks he might have broken something on the car. This is the sound of the Dutchman making his way through the right-hander of turn 3. Can't quite pinpoint exactly what the problem is there, but saying it's pretty much everywhere for the Red Bull driver.
Just on Verstappen, I would say that we've had lots and lots and lots of races this year where he's been in quite a grump in first practice. The car's not been anywhere and blah, blah, blah. He looks in really good shape right now. It's very, very close at the top, but it's certainly not a race where Verstappen and Red Bull seem to be struggling.
The more Verstappen complains on a Friday, the more likely he is to win the race.
Where'd you get that stat from?
I think I've just done too many Fridays with you guys.
Yeah.
And actually watching Qatar as well, obviously that was a bit of a gift from McLaren, but he spent all of Friday moaning, and then he won quite comfortably from basically lap 8. He was always going to win that race.
Yeah, he wouldn't have done that if McLaren hadn't messed his strategy.
But they did. Let's not do hypothetical.
But Max Verstappen's still out there, the man who can't win the Drivers' Championship if he does not finish on the podium this weekend. So Max Verstappen needs to win the race, and Lando Norris ideally to be 4th or lower for him to take the title. Max Verstappen, who sits just 12 points behind Lando Norris coming into this final round. Just to go back to the rookie stuff, Behrman, obviously I agree with that. Hadjar gets the promotion. He's got 15 Q3s this year. It's the most of any driver outside of the big 4 teams, the top 4 teams, which is mightily impressive. So he gets that shot, and of course took that magnificent podium, which yes, he did luck into, as Charles Leclerc finds himself all in a spin at turn 5 before he sets himself up for the back straight. He doesn't quite get to do that on braking, coming into the left-hander, and the rear completely steps out, and round the Ferrari goes. So the tyres screaming from that one, and the walls far enough away that Leclerc doesn't make any contact with them. But not a great start for Leclerc into that corner, although he is 3rd at the moment, only 16 thousandths off of Norris.
Big chances leaked on burnout for the front.
Yeah, he's fun at turn 5.
That was Leclerc Jr. on the radio. I mean, I know we've had brothers in Formula 1 before, but it's very cool to have brothers in the same in the same team at the same time.
Do you know what struck me about that radio message? You called him Charles, not Charles.
Well, we've been
do
calling
we
him
need to
Arthur
back
all
Anna
session.
everything we've ever done?
He's, his name is Charles in his native language, and Arthur obviously speaks his native language.
Well, well, Arthur, or when I was commentating on him in F3, we had a big, long discussion about is it Arthur or Arthur?
People do increasingly call him Charles, even though it's Charles.
He calls himself Charles.
He does, in French.
We're getting into Isaac territory, and I keep flicking between the two because I can't remember.
Just call him Hadjar.
Hadjar, yeah. Anyway, on Hadjar, great rookie season. Borsaletta, I think I agree with you. He's shown real flashes. The now no longer reigning F2 champion, but last year's F2 champion.
He's had his own.
He's had a few big crashes.
He has had a few big crashes, and in obviously driving for Sauber, can't really afford it. But he's held his own, 12-11 in the head-to-head, just in Hulkenberg's favour. He's been okay. I think that's probably all I would say about him. Sort of not really underwhelming, not overwhelming, just, fine.
Yeah, I'd be intrigued to see how he gets on in his second season. Of course, Sauber will become Audi next year, so a lot more money going into that team, their own engine as well, so that could that would bring a lot of risks, but could bring some rewards as well for them. And who else have we forgotten? Oh, Kimi Antonelli. Have we forgotten Kimi Antonelli?
Well, not anymore, but you have.
Not anymore. He's fourth at the moment.
He's still a rookie?
Well, this is funny. Again, it comes back to how things can change as Luke Browning nearly finds the wall, locking up into turn one and running wide. Quite a big lock-up, actually, on the Williams front left tyre there. Browning in for Alex Albon in this session. But I think Kimi Antonelli, it sounds like from the rumblings coming out of Mercedes, there was a bit of a simulator issue going on back at the factory. Bit of correlation, which wasn't helping his confidence, I think.
I think that's what they told us.
Yeah, look, I mean...
The confidence breeds confidence, and if he didn't have it, from whatever reason...
Antonelli came in with a lot of expectations. He did not deliver for a long time. He had a very, very sticky... He had a great weekend in Miami. Then he went off the ball, lost his confidence when Mercedes brought a new suspension system in for Canada, although they had a good result there, ironically. But after that, the European races, it was very difficult until they reverted the suspension. It took him a while to get his confidence back with the old suspension, but now, in this final part of the season, at these long-haul races, he's been increasingly impressive, and he's absolutely justified their faith in him. And he's actually beginning to look like he's going to cause George Russell some serious problems. So I think difficult, but now very, very promising.
I'll give you a stat since we're in statistic land. He scored 3 points in the 9 European races, which is obviously not very good. I do think Mercedes came out and said that just to kind of, make it a bit better for him in terms of public perception. But then obviously in Monza, he had a terrible weekend, and Toto Wolff, the team principal at Mercedes, he came out and said that Antonelli had been underwhelming. And, that was the kick-up that you need, because he's been much better since then.
He certainly has. He's still the youngest pole sitter with that sprint pole in Miami, and the third youngest to reach a podium, now 19 years old. He's actually only 2 points behind Lewis Hamilton for 6th in the Drivers' Championship, so that could rather put not even a damp squib on Lewis Hamilton's season so far this year.
It couldn't get any worse.
It just couldn't get any worse. But if suddenly the man who replaced him, or not replaced him, stepped in that Mercedes seat when he vacated it last year, pips him right at the post, I don't think he'll be too happy with that one. And this is, for Ferrari, when they get to the checkered flag on Sunday, this is... Let's throw this car in the bin and never speak of 2025 again. I'm
not even sure it's just this car, actually. Going back to that media session with Lewis Hamilton, he was asked about all the different regulation changes that he's gone through, all the different cars, what he misses about them, what he liked about them, and obviously talking about these cars that came in from the 2022 season to now, he said, I will miss absolutely nothing. And he hasn't done a lot since these cars have been in. Mercedes was a very difficult couple of years for him driving this car. He hasn't got on board with Ferrari at all this season. It is absolutely a season to forget. There's been a lot of pressure on Fred Vasseur, the team principal, there as well. There were quite a lot of rumblings about whether or not he would be replaced. We all know that Christian Horner, former team principal at Red Bull, who was fired earlier this year in the summer, he's obviously looking to get back into Formula One. I don't think that will happen. I don't think he will go to Ferrari. And then we have this really strange situation, didn't we, with John Elkin, the chairman at Ferrari, who came out and said the drivers need to talk less, which was quite remarkable given one of them is a 7-time world champion. And at the same time, we had Red Bull as mentioned, their change in team principal with Laurent Mekies coming in, and Max Verstappen has been very vocal about how he's liked the changes that have come in, one of them being that rather than just being solely reliant on all of the data and the engineering, they're taking a lot more feedback from the drivers again, which has 90% of the time been to their advantage. They've had a couple of rough weekends still, but they're listening to their drivers more. Ferrari have decided to go the other way, and it feels a little bit like, Rosanna asked that brilliant question, was it Qatar or was it Vegas? Forgive me, Rosanna. And, he was saying, about next year, and he said, I'm just not looking forward to it. And Rosanna pushed him, and it was like, there's just nothing there. They're the blame game. And it was, he's never been it. We win as a team, we lose as a team. And he was like, well, yeah, it's not great, is it?
It's not great for Lewis Hamilton, who, he hasn't out-qualified his teammate Charles Leclerc since Singapore. As I mentioned earlier, he's on a consecutive run of Q1 exits for the 7-time champion. 5 times a pole sitter, 5 times a winner around this track, though, so happy memories, and has the record right now. Not in this session, though. He's made way for the younger Leclerc brother, who is down in 16th at the moment. Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, is up in 3rd and not switched back onto the hard tyre, so he's heading through the left-hander of turn 5 now. As Antonelli reports, I'm bouncing in high speed. We're really seeing this bouncing starting to rear its head again as we get right to the end of this regulation set before we rip up the rule book for 2026. And it is, we've still got an exciting weekend to come to see out this what has been a spectacular year. We've got an exciting 2026 to look out for as well. We're going to have new drivers, new rookies, new team on the grid as well in the form of Cadillac, and we're not going to know who's quick out the blocks until we get really to round 1 in Australia.
Yeah, we have 3 tests, very unusual. The first one being in Barcelona in January. I'm not sure how useful that will be, given the weather can be fairly terrible. But we have the 3 tests. They've opened it up actually a bit more, the first test. Initially it was going to be completely closed off, but now they are letting the teams do a bit of social here and there and feed the media a bit.
We're still not allowed to go.
We're still not allowed to go. No, we are definitely not invited.
Over the fence.
Yes, exactly. But then we have the 2 tests heading out to Bahrain. We'll get a bit of a better idea of the pecking order there. Obviously, the rumblings that we're all getting suggesting that the Mercedes is looking very fast. That engine's looking great. Charles Senior.
We are so slow, huh?
Yes, 29.7 are the others, and we're on 30.0.
The car feels just like it has 0 grip. It's unbelievable. I really don't get it.
Charles Leclerc really not happy, feeling slow, no grip. Actually, he just put his hands up in his steering wheel coming through the right hand of turn 3 in an almost exasperated gesture. And it's only FP1.
I also don't understand that message. Brian Botzi, the race engineer, came back agreeing with Leclerc that he was slow, but then reeled off lap times that suggested he was faster.
Yeah, but is that was his lap time was at 1:24.5? That was his quickest lap in the end.
No,
so he was clearly doing a longer run.
Mid-29s,
yeah.
But we've just seen a graphic saying Norris is also doing mid-29s.
Leclerc's currently 3rd as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
Behind Norris and Verstappen.
I don't know how Leclerc can know that he's slow because he's doing a race simulation run and he's not got the data, has he? But anyway.
He doesn't feel comfortable in the car either way.
But also, moaning about no grip in this session is slightly
it's a bit
pointless.
Yeah. Say the non-drivers. As we get the checkered flag at the end of this session. Lando Norris then out of the blocks and away. The championship leader, fastest at the end of this session. Cut to, on our pictures, a gigantic yawn from his rival and teammate, not in this session, and he clocks that that's just been caught on camera, smiling and laughing. Oscar Piastri, who sat on the pit wall, I don't think he was particularly engaged by that FP1 session.
The nerves keeping him awake, a few sleepless nights.
Quite possibly. Not in this session. We'll see him for FP2, but his teammate was quickest, 8 thousandths of a second quicker than Max Verstappen. Then Leclerc in 3rd, Antonelli 4th, Hülkenberg up in 5th, Russell is 6th ahead of Bortoletto, so the Sauber's pretty quick out the blocks today. Behrman with problems throughout, sensor issue for the British driver. Sainz and Colapinto rounding out the top 10. Hirakawa in 11th, Hadjar 12th, Aron, O'Ward and Lindblad the top 15. Then it was Arthur Leclerc down in 16th ahead of Ayumu Uwasa. Luke Browning 19th with the 2 Aston Martins of Jack Crawford and Cian Shields 20th and last. So I know it's an unrepresentative session, as we've alluded to many times, Rebecca, but first blood to Lando Norris.
Yeah, sure, why not? It's totally pointless, this session, let's be honest. Half the grid nearly half the grid are rookies. But let's be honest, looking at the timings, there's not a lot in it.
Yeah.
8 thousandths of a second between Norris and Verstappen, which is exactly what we want. And then a Charles Leclerc, not exactly as slow as I think he thinks he is.
No, not a lot in it, but more to come, Rosanna.
Yeah, Beck got there eventually with the big sell, didn't she?
Sorry, I know, not picking it up.
But you know what? I went into that session thinking, oh, it'll be a bit quiet and a bit boring, and there aren't many people here in the grandstand to entertain. But actually, we got heaps of track action, so lots of learning for the teams. Yes, there were rookie drivers in, but lots to take forward into that crucial session, FP2.
Yep. Certainly is. Thank you very much, Rosanna. We will be back for FP2 on 5. Sports Extra will be on air from 12:55 ahead of the green light on at 1 o'clock. So we'll see Oscar Piastri back in action for that one, along with Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, our 3 title rivals, going in to Sunday's Grand Prix, the final race of the year, all with a chance of sealing the title. 2 to take their first ever championship, and 1 to take his 5th. All the possibilities are there, but we've still got a bit of a way to go before we get there, and you can join us for every step of the way when the sun sets throughout the course of this evening and the floodlights will come on. They will illuminate this Yas Marina track, and we will get FP2 underway. Thanks to Rosanna, thanks to Andrew, thanks to Beck. As I say, join us on Sports Extra 12:55 for free practice 2. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.